Well, good afternoon. Those of you, I believe most of you have seen me like a couple months ago, right? Yeah, all right. So then you know my job is to eliminate stress or reduce stress. And so we're going to talk about today is kind of a follow-up on what we started, last a couple months ago. So in my mind, this is what a behavioral program should look like, and we're kind of still laying the foundation. So last time I was here, we talked about enhancing our resiliency, taking better care of ourselves and each other, right? You also notice in this blue circle is the thing called taking care of the customer, and in parentheses is compassion. Because in my experience, when I'm trying to reduce stress, you walk into somebody's house and mom hands you a dead baby and begs for you to save its life, and you can't, and she's not going to take that for an answer. How do you have that conversation? Because that conversation sucks. It causes stress. My job is to reduce stress, so we're going to learn how to have that conversation today. Right, with the intent of reducing stress. Then we're also going to talk about the research out of Stanford School of Medicine on what that actually does for us and Mrs. Smith out there, because it increases our life expectancy. It's pretty amazing to put the science behind the book I wrote a long time ago. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about, how to engage with people out there when it's the worst day of their life, not only with the intent of making a positive impact on them, but with the intent of keeping stress levels low and actually walking away from horrible calls feeling good about what you were able to accomplish. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. All right? So I'm not going to teach you how to be empathic. I'm not going to teach you how to shoulder other people's grief. I'm going to teach you how to just understand where that person happens to be in their life when you walk into their house. That's all I want you to understand, so we can help them. Right? So let's talk about this things, the compassion thing. Now this is Justin. Justin was 2 years old. A babysitter put him in the bathtub. She turned the water on and she left. Eventually he's discovered. 911 is called. He gets a fire engine. He gets a fire medic unit. He gets a couple cops that respond to the scene. And while the firefighters are working on this child, because they're trying to revive him, even though he's been underwater for a bit, they quickly realize, crap, we know this kid's parents, which throws a dimension in our stress level, yeah? And so while they were trying to revive this child, one of the firefighters runs to the family home. Now the parents are in the process of moving, hence why the child is at the babysitter's. Dad is miles away in another community. Mom's a few blocks away packing boxes. Dad's unpacking boxes, and family members are driving the stuff back and forth. Firefighter gets to the family home where mom is, says, you need to get to the babysitter, something horrible has happened. They are now running down the street just as a helicopter is landing in a side yard because he's going to be flown to a pediatric center in Portland. And his mom tries to get in the house. A young, well-meaning firefighter has posted himself at the door to protect this woman from the horrible tragedy on the inside. That's going to be his job. And he's not taught like anybody else how do you handle this, right? And as mom gets there, she tries to get in the house. And he says, you can't go in there. And she says, no, I'm going in there. My kid's in there. He says, no, you're not. He's doing what he believes is the right thing to do. It's also Christmas time, and they're doing the resuscitation next to a Christmas tree. He doesn't think she should have to see that. So I know where he's coming from on this. And she goes, you don't understand, my son's in that house. And he says, no, ma'am, you don't understand. You can't go in there. She's going to get in the house. He ain't going to let her. They begin to wrestle, to the point where she's got physical bruises on her body from wrestling with a well-meaning young firefighter trying to do the right thing. Make a long story short, Justin was my son. It was about a month after this had happened. I am driving through the town we used to live. I used to be a volunteer firefighter in that community in the 70s. I knew the firefighters there. And we're driving through that community. And towards me on the highway is a firefighter that I know from that town. And I stuck my arm out the door and I waved to him. He's a friend of mine. And my wife, who is sitting next to me, said, that's the a-hole that fought with me when Justin died. And she shared that experience. Now, I didn't make it to the scene. She had not told me what happened that day there. And when she told me what happened, I specifically remember my wife looking right at me while I'm driving and going, you guys are all assholes, including me. Because then she goes, is that what they teach you to do? That's what you were taught, right? To do what you did to me? Meaning all of us would do the same thing. It's like, how do you respond to that? I responded with, we weren't taught. That's the problem. Right? So when I got back to work, it's like, man, we got to do things differently. And I had just been promoted. That was one of the reasons why I was moving. I was moving closer to where my employer was. And I started paying attention now as a company officer. I could look at the big picture. In the patient care, we were really dialed on that. Where we failed was these peripheral people, these significant others that maybe are frightened or are grieving or hiding or whatever. We failed to interact with them. Or if they were crying, we removed them from the room. Or we were giving them false hope because I didn't want to give them bad news. We were doing all the stuff that we shouldn't be doing because nobody told us. So I thought, we got to do business differently here. Because my wife, that's imprinted in my wife's head. She's going to remember that the rest of her life. Forever. She thinks not highly of my profession. That hurts. So I started calling training institutions. How come we are not taught this? And the answer was the same. I called about 30 of them. Universities that teach paramedic programs. The answers are the same. There's no room in the curriculum for that. Number two is we don't want our students shouldering other people's grief. Well, compassion is not shouldering other people's grief. Empathy is. I figured I got to do this myself, right? And so what you're going to see here is the end product of several years of trial and error of what works, what doesn't work, to come up kind of with this, right? So that's what you're going to see. So if we're going to engage with these folks out here when they're having the worst day of their life, when they are in crisis, we should know how people are wired when they're not in crisis. What's normal look like? Well, and we'll take this back 2 months ago when I was here. We talked about the operational systems in our brain, right? Survival brain kicks on, cognitive brain turns off. That's why training is so important for us, right? You remember that? It's the same with them. But you understand the survival brain is also the emotional brain. So if this is emotional brain, this is cognitive brain, we're in this steady state, and we float around. It's not rigid, we float around. These people driving out here are floating around. Somebody cuts one of them off, their emotions are going to kick in. What's that do to the ability to process? For a brief moment, it kicks off, and you might get flipped off. They might honk at you. Hell, in California, they'll shoot at you. Because for a brief moment in their life, they've lost the ability to be cognitive. And usually when you flip somebody off, then you go, okay, I felt better, now I'm back. Right? And that's just how we work. A crisis is anything that throws us out of balance, and for some reason, I can't get it back. And 2 months ago, we talked about post-traumatic stress injury. It's because you're stuck here. Right? So something has happened. Typically, the person out there has personalized something because it's a loved one, and they can't get it back. That's the crisis that we're going to be talking about today. They are sudden, meaning the person couldn't have predicted it when they woke up. I tend not to be talking about somebody dying, at home under hospice care. Don't get me wrong, those are sad, but it tends not to create an emotional crisis. Grandpa dropping down with a heart attack, with a long history of heart disease, don't get me wrong, sad, probably is not going to produce a crisis event. I'm talking about seeing your kid get hit by a car, your loved one falling out of a tree and dying, you turning to them and giving them news they weren't expecting, something they weren't expecting, can cause a crisis. And because it's sudden, the person isn't prepared to handle it. The crisis that we deal with tend to be pretty short in length, 2 to 4 to 6 hours, maybe at the longest, being out of balance. Imagine losing the ability to process information for 4 to 6 hours. Can't imagine it. That would suck. That would be tough. And because they're sudden, because the person isn't prepared, it can produce unacceptable behavior. It can, because for a brief moment in their life, they've lost the ability to be cognitive. It's as simple as that. This is biology. Humans don't have control over this. All right? This is what it looks like. They've witnessed something. You've told them something you weren't prepared to hear. What's the slap in the face crisis look like? Well, we're going to call it high anxiety or emotional shock. They're going to get 3 choices: fight, flight, or freeze, just like our stress response, based on previous experience and or training. And they're going to get hormone dump. So they can be in your face bouncing off the wall, or they could be locked up, sitting in the corner, and that's normal for them, whatever that is. Whatever their behavior is, unless they're violent, is probably normal. Denial is nothing more than a defense mechanism. Horrible information coming in. You can't see it, but they got invisible arms that do this, right? Because they don't want to hear it. Their brain's not processing it. Now it's going to stick. They will process it later on. It's a defense mechanism. Nope. Right? That's normal. Anger is nothing more than a normal human response to frustration. Right? And as most humans like to be able to control their little environment, if something happens in this little environment outside their control, particularly to the extent where they got to invite strangers in to control what they can't, that can be frustrating. Anger might be a result of that. That's normal. Don't take it personally. They're angry at the situation, not at you. That's your crisis. And then when they start getting out of crisis, the remorse, grief, reconciliation, as they try to come up with what's the new norm going to look like for them. Right? Now, as first responders, are you going to see people in the field in high anxiety or emotional shock? Yeah. You're going to see people out there in denial? Oh yeah, nod your head, yes. Do you see angry people every once in a while out there? Oh yeah. As first responders, you are going to catch people in those first three phases of this model. Now, if you get nothing else out of today, get this. When a human being is in those first three phases, everything they see, hear, smell, taste, and touch is permanently imprinted for the rest of their lives. When they're in those phases, when you are there. What you all do when somebody is in those first three phases can be more important in how they get down to here than all the mental health care they might get in the months or years down the road. You, in fact, are the ones that catch them kind of at ground zero and can set the stage. Nobody else does that. I don't catch them here. That's the first 2 hours of an incident. I'm not chasing ambulances around. I catch them years later. They're stuck right here. You are the ones that get them there. And you have the opportunity to set the stage for how they get through this. So if you're feeling like, oh crap, that's kind of a crazy responsibility. Well, yeah, it is, which would tell me you'd take your job seriously. I'm going to tell you it's easy to do. We're going to talk about this because it's easy to do the right thing there. Yeah? So that's Angie. Angie had just dropped her son off at high school and got in a motor vehicle accident as she was pulling out of the parking lot, and she was killed instantly. Now it's not working that day, but my pager went off, and it was my boss. He says, hey, I got a car wreck in front of the high school. A young woman's been killed. Don't know if kids are involved, but I got a crew there. I'm waiting for the medical examiner to get there before they extricate the body. Could you check in with them, make sure they're okay? Sure, because I was doing the behavioral health stuff. So I drove to the scene. It's about 7:30 in the morning. It's a beautiful day, like what you got going on here. The crew was fine. Angie was dead. When they got there, she was killed instantly. There was no medical intervention. They threw a yellow traffic blanket over her body, which is still in the car, and they're shooting the breeze, waiting for the medical examiner to get there. Right? The scene's going to change. The high school is behind me here. She is pulling out onto a state highway. This state highway dumps 5-bedroom communities onto the interstate freeway system for the morning commute. So it's a busy road in the morning and at night. So you got commuters coming in, trying to get to the freeway, and they can't, and some of them are parking and getting out to see what's going on. You got hundreds of high school kids coming to school and can't get in the parking lot because the road is closed. So we're sitting in, it feels like a big auditorium, just people everywhere. Now law enforcement has closed the road about 200 feet on each side of this incident. And that's where everybody's just gathered all the way around. Angie's car, as she's pulling out, she's hit on her driver's door. She's an unrestrained motorist. Her car's now over here facing you. Her butt's in the passenger seat, and her head has gone through the passenger side window and is sticking out. Angie was a beautician. She had just recently put some fire engine red streaks in her hair, and the reason I tell you that is you could see her from behind across the parking lot and go, that's got to be Angie because of the coloring in the back of her hair, which is going to come into play because the firefighters didn't do a really good job in covering the top of her head up. Right? So here I am. Angie's car's right there. You got 4 or 5 law enforcement there doing an investigation. Got a fire apparatus right here. I'm standing with the crew, and we're BSing. And at home is Danny. Danny hears on the morning news there's been a fatal accident on State Highway 219 in front of the high school. Take alternative means to get to morning commute. And Danny would tell you, my wife just went down there. I'm going to go check it out. And so I'm standing there with the crew, and this guy, we don't know who he is, he comes under the police barricade over here. And he gets about 100 feet of that 200-foot journey. A cop sees him, runs up to him, and says, hey, what are you doing? Danny goes, looks like my wife's car. And the cop goes, well, buddy, the road's closed. I got that. I think that's my wife's car. Did you hear what I said? I just said the road's closed. You need to get up there. I think that's my wife's car. You either turn around and you walk up there, or I will arrest you. I'm going to put you in cuffs, and you will spend the rest of the day in jail. And Danny just went, and up he walked. And the cop went back about the investigation. My crew, not my crew, the fire crew and I, we are watching this going, ah. We watch this guy walk back up under the barricade. We now watch him weave through all the gawkers. And we're all going, God, what's he going to do? What's this guy going to do? He's walking all the way around. It's about a 15-minute walk for him. Now he's on this side, and he comes underneath that police barricade. That's the side of the car his wife's head's sticking out of. He sees the fire engine red streaks in her hair, and he screams, Angie, and now he's running. And when he screams his wife's name, and he's running, it startles law enforcement. They see this dude running. He's a big boy. And man, it was just like game one. He is on the ground. He's on his back. His hands are cuffed behind him. They got a knee in his chest. And one of those goofballs has got a can of a mace going off. And he is screaming to get to his wife. Now, in defense of that law enforcement agency, if we can come up with a defense for them, this is a stressful call. A young woman has been killed. None of us like to go out on calls like that, right? I'm also assuming those officers are thinking, who's going to go into that school back there and pull a kid out of his classroom and give him the worst news he'll ever hear? I'm going to assume none of them want to do that. And sometimes it's normal human nature when there's a lot of stressors going on. Let's sterilize the scene. I don't want to deal with anything else. And I'm not telling you that sometimes that might not be appropriate. But if you're worried about stressors, let me ask you this. What's more stressful? Throwing this guy down in front of literally hundreds of people while he is screaming to get to his wife, or identifying who he is, give him a minute or two with his wife, find a support person to stay with him, and then take him off the scene. What's more stressful for you? And if you're not sure, if Angie was, your mom or your wife or your sister or your daughter, and you showed up at that scene, how would you want to be treated? Because that's what this is about. How would you want to be treated? So we have to do business differently. It took me 5 years to get this photograph. I was there, I witnessed it. I waited till after her funeral. I called him up. Hey, I was there. I saw how you were treated. It was horrible. I'm trying to keep that from ever happening again. Can I get a picture of Angie? And he'd hang up. And I would just do one phone call a year because I'm not going to bug the guy. But finally, he would talk to me on the phone. He would still hang up on me. He goes, you're in one of those damn uniforms. You're like the rest of them. That's his imprint. And on the 5th time of me reaching out, so 5 years post, he finally decided to meet with me at a coffee shop. He gave me this photograph, and the dude is the angriest guy I've ever met in my life. And he still hates the fire service, but he hates anybody that wears a government uniform because of that experience. Because that's what's imprinted. And the thing is, if that's his experience in stress, then all cops would do that forever. And that's just the way it works with stress. The most traumatic moment in a person's lifetime is the death notification. I fully understand that's not always our responsibility. But if it hasn't happened to you yet, there may come a call in your life when you declare a death in the field and you turn around and there's somebody standing there. You may not even know they were there. And they're going to say to you, hey, why are you walking away and how are they doing? And suddenly you're put in a position to say something. And the words you use, and whether you're in a T-shirt, a sweatshirt, a coat, whether it's slime yellow or blue, or you have a hat on, whether you smile, whether you frown, your choice of words, whether your hair's combed, is permanently imprinted for the rest of their life. Permanently imprinted. So we've got to kind of be on our game. So what are we going to do? What can we do? Well, we have choices. We can put up fire line tape, keep everybody away. I'm not telling you that sometimes that's not appropriate if there's hazards involved. But even then, I can identify people that are significant relatives and move them away from the rest of the herd and let them know what's going on. Same way I'd want my family treated. Either case, if I'm going to engage with somebody when they're in crisis, the first thing I need to do is I better take care of myself. Now, we spent 2 months ago going over how to take better care of ourselves. The moral of the story here is I would have a hard time engaging with somebody out there who's in crisis if I haven't taken care of my stuff up here. Now, we know this is easy to take care of this stuff. You tell somebody about it. It doesn't even have to be a therapist. You could tell a peer. You could tell each other, depending on what your culture says. So it's not in here. But you got to take care of this if you're going to engage with those folks out there. Yeah? And then we can convey caring. I can't save everybody's life. But what I can do is leave an imprint that I cared. That's what I want their takeaway to be. Right? And we'll teach you how to do that. One of the ways we do that is dosing out the news. So this morning, just like every morning for the last 50 years, an elderly couple gets up together, they come down the stairs of their old house, Grandpa heads out, he gets the morning newspaper, Grandma heads into the kitchen, starts to prepare breakfast, the newspaper gets brought in, he sits at the table where she's cooking, and he's reading her the morning news, and then breakfast is ready, they sit down, they eat together, and then they talk about what the day's going to bring. They've been doing that for 50 years. Except this morning during the reading of the newspaper, it's quiet. She turns to look, and thump, he face plants on the table. And she runs over and she shakes him, and he's not responding. There's a phone on the wall. She runs to it. She picks it up. She calls you guys. Your dispatcher tries to give her some pre-arrival instructions. She can't do it. You walk into that house. She is still stuck on the phone next to the wall. Now, who are my medics in here? Okay. So it's been a while since I've been a medic, but I'm assuming you guys are going to walk into that house, lift his head back, open up the airway, and feel for a pulse. Yeah, we still do that? You're going to find none. You're going to pull him out of the chair. You're going to lay him on his back so we can do an intervention. While we are doing that, one of us should look at this woman and say, ma'am, your husband's not breathing. He doesn't have a heartbeat. And I'm back to work. That's a dose. And even to an elderly woman, what does that mean? It's not good. Absolutely right. Here's another thing you need to understand. She gets to stay here. This is her house, not mine. She has a right to be wherever she wants to be. And as long as she doesn't get in my way, she gets to be wherever she wants to be here. Matter of fact, I encourage them to stay in the room. Right? So that's a dose. If you could look in her head, you'd see the gears starting to turn about she just heard. Right? So let's get this guy, let's get fast patches on him. He's in fine V-fib. Let's give him a course of electricity, and we shock him into a systole. Good or bad? We want more squiggle, not less, and we made less squiggle. He got no squiggle now at all, so that's not good. I'm so sorry, but your husband's heart did not respond to electricity. I'm back at work. Now she's got not breathing, no heartbeat, it didn't respond to electricity. Hell, on TB, it always responds to electricity, right? Crap. So her brain's just digesting it. All right, let's get this guy tubed. Let's get CPR going. Let's get a line in his arm and start giving him some cardiac meds. Maybe we're 30 minutes into this now. Still asystolic, no response. I am so sorry, but your husband's heart's not responding to any of our medications. Still working. Now, the first county I was a paramedic in, we could not declare death in the field without a physician consult. To be honest with you, I like that. Because if I'm 30 minutes into this or 40 minutes in and my crew and I are thinking, yeah, he's not going to live. I might look at her and say, if we don't get a response here from your husband pretty quick, I'm going to have to call a hospital, and I'm going to talk to a doctor, and that doctor is going to determine whether we should continue or whether we should stop. Right? The organization that I retired from, those medics made those decisions on their own. So the conversation might be 30, 40 minutes in. If we don't start seeing a response here pretty quick, we need to start to think about whether we should continue or whether we should stop with your husband. I'm sorry. And in either case, if we decide to declare death in the field, when I turn to tell this woman, I am so sorry your husband's dead, what was the intent of me dosing out the news? You're absolutely right. We are preparing her. It's not a big shock. We told her he was dead when we walked in the house. And everything we told her is stuff that was not working. She is there ahead of us. Right? And you don't get the slap in the face, high anxiety, emotional shock, the denial, and you tend not to get that crisis response. Is it sad? Is she going to cry? Absolutely. But you don't get the emotional, whatever that might look like for her. All right? It prepares them. And you know, the rest of the morning when I'm talking to people, you'll hear me, even when I talk to them, it's in doses. Before you get to the bad end, let's give it to them in doses, all right? And you got to be truthful, right? Because everything you say is going to be permanently imprinted. If there's a little white lie in that, they will eventually figure it out. And once they figure that out, then everybody that wears the Central Pierce uniform is dishonest. We all are. Matter of fact, all firefighters are dishonest. Just like my experience, we're all assholes, right? Because that's their experience in a true emergency. And if one does it, then we must all do that. Yeah. Give permission to grieve. If they want to shed tears, who am I to say knock it off? And I feel kind of bad because early on in my career, I was in a first two that had a lot of cardiac arrest. We'd remove them from the room because it bothered us. And that's the wrong thing to do, right? But I didn't know, right? So if they want to shed tears right here, absolutely, that's your right. Do it. As a matter of fact, that's healthy. And we also offer continuing support, right? Meaning I don't leave these people by themselves, because there was a time in my career when I did, but I didn't know. I was never taught. I had to learn to say, if we declared a death in the field, is there somebody I can call that you would be comfortable sitting with? Do you have family close by? Do you have neighbors that you would be okay with? Do you belong to a church? Is there somebody from your church I can get a hold of and have them come sit with you? The fire department has chaplains. They would be happy to come sit with you and help you through this day. And if I can't get any of those, then my apparatus needs to go out of service. And once this program went into place, every chief I ever worked for since then would tell you, if you can't get somebody to the scene, you're out of service. Thank you, boss. Right? This is the first call I actually tried what I was putting together. So this is my first attempt at doing this compassionate thing, right? This was in January, and I live in the Willamette Valley. It's 20 degrees outside, but sunny. It's very much like your morning this morning. It was about 20 degrees when I woke up here, but the sun's out. And see, I grew up in the Willamette Valley. Januaries in the Willamette Valley are gray and wet. It's gray and wet in the Willamette Valley usually till June. Yeah? And so to wake up on a day like this when I was still working, and I did that morning, it's going to be the best day ever because I love going to work on sunny days. It's that day. Matter of fact, after shift change, I'm with my crew. I'm the company officer. It's like, get that apparatus spit polished. And I talked to my AO, get the chrome polish on this because we're going to be outside all day long today. We're just going to drive around. We're going to wave at kids. That's what we're going to do today. And then fight fire, save lives. But we're going to be outside. It's a beautiful day. And that's our day. We're having a blast. And at lunchtime, an 18-year-old girl leaves her job, and she goes home and she has lunch with her parents. After lunch, she gets back into her car. She's heading back to work. She's heading from right to left. She's driving a Porsche 944. Now, this photograph is in it's a hop field. Now, hop fields take many, many acres, so highways go through hop fields where I come from. Right? So I worked inside of a city, but we protected rural properties as well. She's heading from right to left. You can tell by this power pole here, it's a little lower than the next power pole, which is right here, because there's a dip in the road there. She's in a Porsche 944. In that dip, in her lane, is an intoxicated driver driving a pickup truck. When he came out of that dip in her lane, they hit. Neither driver touched a brake. It happened that fast. Neither one knew the other was there, and they hit. Now, if you count the lug nuts on the Porsche 944 and you count the lug nuts on the pickup truck, who's got more? Who got more? The truck does. So who's going to win? Because he or she with the most lug nuts wins the battle, right? You take a truck and a semi, who's got more lug nuts? Semi. Take a semi and a train, who's got more lug nuts? See how that works? Just count the lug nuts, right? So he does not have a mark on him. Nothing. Not a mark. She, who has done everything right, in her lane, in her safety belt, the power transfer, the weight transfer is unsurvivable. When we pulled up, she's got 2 gasps a breath a minute, agonal respirations, 2 a minute, and her heart rate is 6 beats a minute, and it's an unproductive rhythm. It's a trauma code. I can't get a helicopter to fly a trauma code in Oregon. They won't do it because in their mind, it's dead. We don't fly dead people in helicopters. She is 40 minutes by ground to the nearest hospital, and it's not a trauma center. She's got all the odds against her. The thing is, I did what I think you would do because she's my only patient. She's young. I have resources. We pull her out of the car and we work her. We work her till she's dead, right? And I was actually called the ED, and I said, this is what we got when we got here. This is what we're doing. This is what we tried. Here's the end result. And the doc said, stop. She's dead. Okay? So I just declared a death in the field. I looked up over the body, and coming down the road, because we haven't had a chance to close the road yet, is an elderly man and woman, and they got 2 kids in tow. It turned out to be her mom and dad and her little brother and sister who had heard the collision and were coming down to see what was going on. Now, understand this. When I say, here comes an elderly man and woman, hell, they were younger than I am now, a lot younger than I am now, right? So it's crazy perspective. I just walked up to him and said, hey, can I help you with something? Because that's how I identify who's who. And they said, that's our daughter's car, and they could see the body there. And it's hard to say, are you sure that's your daughter's car? When it's a Porsche 944. There ain't a lot of those out there, right? Stay right here, I'll be right back. I ran up to the police agency working this call. I said, listen, it's my organization's belief that if family members show up where a loved one's been seriously injured or killed, they should have the right to be with their loved one for a few minutes. With your permission, that's mom and dad over there. Are you all right with me bringing them forward, letting them spend a few moments with their daughter, and then I'll get support, I'll get them off the scene. And they said, yeah, we're okay with that. Thank you. But why did I get permission? It's a crime scene. Absolutely. So I will tell you this. I do not know what your thoughts are of Oregonians. We certainly have thoughts of what Washingtonians are like, but I'm not sure if you know what that is. We are nuts down there. I mean, we are weird, but I like that. It's very eclectic. We like freedom. We like being able to do what we do. We don't like people telling us what to do, right? And so there's a lot of disagreements on smoking pot and doctor-assisted suicide and all that, but that's us. There is one thing we can collectively agree upon in the state of Oregon, all of us. We do not like drunk drivers killing our kids. I want that dude to go to jail. I'd love for him to go to jail the rest of his life. Now, that's not going to happen. But I don't want to mess up any chance he's got to go to jail. I don't want to mess up a crime scene. That's why I get permission. Anytime I'm outside of the home and law enforcement involved, I always get permission. So they gave me permission. I walked back to mom and dad, and I said something to the extent of, I am so sorry your daughter's dead. If you'd like to go up there and spend a few minutes with her, we will allow that. But I need to tell you a couple things. When we got here, your daughter was still buckled in the car. It looks to me like she did everything right. She wasn't breathing. She didn't have a heartbeat. I'm sorry. We pulled her out of the car. We opened up her dress so we could get going on her heart. All right, I put a tube down into her lungs so we could breathe for her. We stuck a needle in her arm to give her heart some fluid to pump. And it doesn't look nice, but it's still, those things are still on her body. I'm sorry. She's got some blood around her mouth and her nose. She's got some bruising on her chest, not only from the firefighter trying to get her heart beating again, but from her safety belt. It bruised her a little bit as well. But if you'd like to go up there, we will certainly allow that. What do you suppose they chose? Oh, they chose yes. In my experience, 100% of the time, you ask a parent if they want to be with their kid, not only will they say yes, they will push you out of the way. That's their child. And up they came. Now remember, it's 20 degrees outside. Now my firefighter had just grabbed the beautiful yellow traffic blanket off the apparatus. Dad took it away from him, got down on his hands and knees. He unfolded it. He's talking to his daughter and he's tucking her in. Now remember, this is my first time doing this. I'm thinking, oh crap, I don't like this. This isn't fun anymore. This was going to be the fun shift with the sun out. I don't like this. I specifically remember the thought of, I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing by teaching you this is the right thing. I had that thought because I didn't like it. Here's the thing. And remember, this program is via trial and error. The scene is going to flip. It will flip. But we're going to have to come back. But when I first putting this stuff together, it's like, oh, that's tough to watch. That's tough to watch, that kind of stuff. All right, so we'll come back to this. A good death notification and nothing changes, a bad one and everything changes. You see where I got that quote? Does that make sense to you? If I was to take a poll of these folks driving, like the red light's down here, I run out there with a clipboard, give me the top 5 most respected occupations here in Pierce County. What do you suppose I would hear? Most respected professions. Are there any? Doctor, absolutely. What else? Military, absolutely. Pandemic, nurses go up, yeah. First responders. Are you not a respected occupation? And they're all good. Teachers make the list sometimes. Well, I'm a little biased. I think firefighters ought to be at the top of the pyramid. I really do. I think when we pull up in front of somebody's house, I want those homeowners to go, thank God you guys are here. That's what I want. I think we ought to be number one. So knowing that, I can be respectful and convey caring and tell somebody, I'm so sorry you've lost a loved one. And in their mind, nothing's changed because they still lost a loved one. I do something perceived as uncaring. I am not an uncaring person. It would have to be perceived. A poor choice of words, maybe a subtle eye roll at you, and they saw me do that. Or maybe, what's your first name? Joe. Joe was dispatched on this call as well because it came in as a cardiac arrest, but we've already declared a death in the field, so they're going to be recalled. But they're slowing down in front of the house, and I stop them. Hey, because we're going fishing in the morning. Hey, we still on in the morning? I'll pick you up like at 7:30 or something. We do a high five, have a good evening, and I go back, and the family's looking at the picture window going, what in the hell are they so happy about when their loved one's, laying over there in the corner? So it has to be perceived as uncaring. If I do that, not only do they lose their loved one that day, I just took away the most respected occupation in this county. In their mind, it gets worse than the death of their loved one. I just took away a resource that they knew they could call if they needed help, ever in the future. In their mind, it gets worse. Yeah. So let's talk about some things that are perceived as uncaring. Even though they're said, everything you're going to see here was said with the intent to provide comfort. Everything. If you said some of these things, please don't feel bad. I've said some of these things because nobody told us what we were supposed to say. The ones you are going to see up here that I didn't say, I was witness to, and they didn't work the way that was intended. All right? And you probably have your own that you have heard. But, you would think this would work. I know how you feel. Even if you do know how they feel. It doesn't work when the person's in crisis, because what I have discovered in this line of work is every person driving by out there has a history with their family or loved ones or friends that I am not expected to know everybody's history. So here is an example. Let's say I lost my wife 5 years ago in a car wreck. Now, I haven't. My wife is fine. We texted this morning, so she's good. But let's say I'm a widower. I'm out on a traffic collision where a guy like Danny is trying to get to his wife, and maybe police are holding him back a little bit, and he really needs to get to his wife. And I'm there, and I see that, and I come up to him, and I say, hey, man, I understand, or I know how you feel. I lost my wife a few years ago in a collision. Said with the intent to provide comfort, yeah? Let's say that person had an argument with their wife that morning. Let's say that person, before their wife left, called her the word you never call your wife. And he called her that. And he needs to get that body to apologize. And here I come. Hey, I know how you feel. He's going to look at me like, you are an idiot. Get out of my face. And I'm going to ramp him up with the intent to provide comfort. So this doesn't work when they are in crisis. You kind of with me on that? This works really well in a grief group, but nobody's in crisis in a grief group. Okay? Or this doesn't work when they are in crisis. Because there's no way we could know the history between these people. I don't expect you to know the history between those people. You shouldn't feel that way. Well, that's the only part of the brain engaged. They don't have a choice. And who am I to say what's right and what's wrong when somebody's out of balance? Whatever they're doing, as long as it's not violent, it's going to be normal to me. Right? You're so strong. Because they have a choice, fight, flight, or freeze. And we make those choices based on previous experience and or training. And some of us don't have the previous experience on how we're supposed to behave when a loved one gets killed. Not always, but usually it's a guy. Not always, but usually it's a guy who has been taught, since day one, boys don't show emotions, right? We don't cry, on and on and on and on. And then they grow up, they get in a relationship, and a loved one dies, maybe unexpectedly, and they don't know what the hell they're supposed to do. And sometimes they just sit there and do nothing. And then a guy like me, who, whether we transport this loved one or not, I'm taking my drug box out to my unit, and this guy's sitting in the chair right there, and I give him a pat on the shoulder as I walk out. Hey, man, thanks for being strong for us. Right? Really what I'm saying is, thanks for sitting in that chair and not getting in my way, and thanks for not crying, because when a guy cries, I get the EBGBs. That's what I'm saying. Here's the thing. What I do for kind of a living now, or a hobby now, is I might get that guy, particularly if he's a first responder, I'll get him 5 years later. And if that was said to them, it'll come up, followed by, they're idiots, aren't they? Because when my wife dropped, man, I thought I was going to die too. I forgot to breathe. I am sitting there trying to remind myself it's time to take a breath. I thought I was going to die. My life was turned upside down. And this firefighter comes by and tells me how strong I am. What an idiot. And that's what's imprinted in them. So that does not work. You must get on with your life. What's that asking somebody to do? I didn't say this, by the way. I'll knock on wood here. What's that asking somebody to do? Yeah, move forward, yeah? What's the only thing a person in crisis will accept, and chances are you can't give them that? It's the only thing they're going to accept. Turn the clock back to when he was still reading me the morning newspaper. That's the only thing that lady was going to accept from me. I couldn't give her that. But if that's the only thing she can accept from me, how successful am I going to be trying to push her in the exact opposite way? It's not going to work, right? Or you must get on with, or you'll get over it. Same thing. Now I've heard this. I had my boss at the time told me to get over it. It's like, it never made sense to me. When I hear that, it was like, am I supposed to go home, throw away all the pictures, all the clothing, anything else that is about him, and pretend like that he never existed? That's how I interpret that. Right? People don't want to get over it. They like to remember their loved ones. So that makes absolutely no sense to them. Okay, so it doesn't work. If you work in an occupation where you're going to see people dying from really stupid stuff, very preventable stuff, and it's easy to get frustrated. Try to resist that urge to get frustrated. Unrestrained motor, smoke detector batteries disabled, kills people. Cardiac arrest, when did the chest pain start? Well, it started 10 hours ago. We didn't want to bother you. And you want to go, if you had called us 10 hours ago, you'd have been having dinner with them tonight. Resist that temptation. Who's the most respected occupation out there? It's us. Let's stay there. In my experience, they figure that out on their own. If they don't, the media or law enforcement can help them figure that out. It's not going to be me. If you go out on a call that's really frustrating, take a breath, go back to the station, chase each other around for a little bit and burn that off. Yeah? Your anguish isn't going to bring them back. Well, this falls under that. Allow them to grieve. And who am I to say, you do what you need to do, because that's healthy for them. They led a good life. What an amazing thing to say at a funeral. What not an amazing thing to say while they're still laying on the living room floor. Okay? Don't question God's will. By a show of hands, how many of you know what God's will is when it comes to death and dying? I'm assuming some of you have some thoughts on this. And as a matter of fact, I, in fact, know what God's will is when it comes to death and dying. And I could stand up here and tell you what God's will is, and chances are we're not going to all agree on it. So if we're all in a steady state and we're not going to agree on it, how successful am I going to be when one of us is out of balance in a crisis situation? So Tim's rule of thumb is, I am not going to put my personal beliefs on anybody who's in crisis. I'm not going to do that. If they want to talk about this, absolutely tell me about your beliefs. I will follow them wherever they want to go with their beliefs. I will not insert mine. If they really want to get into that conversation, I get the God guys and gals out there who are chaplains, because it's easy for me to get out of my wheelhouse on this stuff, and that's their wheelhouse. Yeah, but that doesn't, people don't find comfort in that from your perspective, only their perspective. Okay? You'll find somebody else. Now, I didn't say this, but I remember it as if it was yesterday, and it was from the 80s. Some of you probably weren't even born in the 80s. 29-year-old guy, the light switch turned off on him right at the breakfast table. No history of anything. 29 years old, healthy. Somebody flipped the switch. He's done. He's shut off right in the kitchen. He's been married 1 year to a 29-year-old woman. And here's what I remember about that morning. It's my fire engine, a crew of 3. I got private provider medics, because there's private providers out there. So I got a paramedic, the guy's supine on the ground, got a paramedic from the ambulance managing the airway. The other paramedic from the ambulance is on the guy's left arm pushing cardiac medications. My firefighter is pulling medications per requested from the medic to hand to the medic. My driver is doing chest compressions, and I'm the company officer, so I'm over the guy's right shoulder with a clipboard documenting. We're 30, 40 minutes into this. He was asystolic when we got there. He's still asystolic, but we're working him because he's young. Right? We've actually talked to the ED about, and they're giving us different types of drugs, and try this, and we can do that. But we're talking about right now whether we're going to transport or not. And as we're having that conversation between public and private agencies, the young woman walks into the room we are at with an armload of stuff that she wants to take to the hospital for her husband. Sleeping bag, pillows, slippers, razor, everything he's going to need at the hospital, right? And when she walked into the room, the medic at the head looked up at her and said, "Don't worry, sweetheart, you'll find somebody else." Yeah. And exactly, we got the same response with my crew. Like, in hindsight, I go back to say, where does that come from? Nobody at that scene was malicious. That had to come from a place where they thought it would be comforting to somebody. I can only assume that came from a place of, you are a young woman. You have a lot of life ahead of you. Chances are you will find somebody else to fall in love with and have a wonderful life. I understand where the intent is. I think the timing was off because we were still working on her husband. Right? So I don't think that young lady probably found any comfort in that. Be thankful you have other kids. I heard this more than I got fingers and toes because people just don't know what to say. All right. So my first job, or my first fire station that I was a professional firefighter at, across the street was a large senior citizen community. It's almost like an intact city inside of a bigger city. And every Thursday in that community, they had a huge auditorium. About 500 to 800 retired folks would get together in this auditorium. They do Thursday morning coffee klatch, coffee and donuts, invite community leaders in to give speeches, business leaders to, sell their wares. Neighborhood associations in that community would get up there, and then, then they would just basically, bitch about taxes and the government, because that's what you do when you're retired. Yeah? I worked a 24, 48-hour shift, so every third day I'm at work. When my third day fell on a Thursday, so every third Thursday, my boss would have me get on their agenda out there. I would take my fire engine out there. They would give me 20 minutes. I would do 10 minutes of stand-up comedy. Old people jokes. My wife hates my sense of humor. These people laughed. They laughed. I felt like Jay Leno up there. I was living the dream. So I got to do 10 minutes of comedy, and then I would do 10 minutes of, this is what your fire departments can do for you this month. Talk about we change smoke detector batteries out. We would replace furnace filters if you live in this community. Every fire apparatus we have has a home safety checklist. If you're retired, call us. They will come to your house for free. Make sure rugs are secured so you're not falling and breaking hips or getting heads caught between the toilet and the tub. Make sure extension cords are picked up. We will do anything we can for you because you're important to us. Right? My boss made me go out there because it's votes. Right? I went out there because they laughed at I was Jay Leno every third Thursday. I canceled a Thursday morning coffee klatch when my son was killed because I took some time off from work. When I re-engaged at work, I took my engine company back out there to the clubhouse to meet with the lady that does the calendaring for that to get back on their agenda every third Thursday. And she's probably a late 80s, early 90s year old lady. And I told her why I'd been gone. And she goes, you got other kids? And I said, I got one other son. She goes, I had 5 kids. And when my number 3 son was 5 years old, he died. She didn't share how he died, but my crazy brain's thinking, okay, she's 80-something, probably a few years ago, yeah? And she said, you'd be amazed at the number of people that came up to me and told me I should be thankful I have other kids. And she said, you know what, even after all these years, that's never made sense to me. I had 5 children because I wanted 5 children. And my number 3 boy, man, I loved him as much as 5 and 4 and 2 as 1. Just, it's never made sense. And you know what? If you take this literally, she could lose 3 more kids and still be thankful, yeah? Still got one. Be thankful. That's So it doesn't make sense to the parents. I get where this comes from. I do. I have not lost an only child. I couldn't imagine what that would be like. I couldn't imagine. That would haunt me to even thinking about that. I've been on those calls where the entire kid population of a family, you kill 3 or 4 kids in a motor vehicle, all their kids. I can't imagine what that would be like. I understand where this comes from. The thing is, parents find no comfort in you telling them that. They will figure that out on their own. Right? It's not comforting to them, or it would have been worse if. Now understand that crisis is real to the person experiencing it. It doesn't always have to be death and dying. It has to be something that happened that they couldn't have predicted when they woke up. It could be a leaky roof leaking water on an Oregon Trail quilt that great-grandmother brought across, and they're really upset about that. That might be their crisis. Don't try to soften that with, oh, crap, really? A water leak? You should have saw we were at earlier today. That's not going to help them. It's real to them. Yeah? Let's come back to this. So it's 20 degrees outside. Dad has tucked his daughter in. Now, here's the thing that's going to put a twist in this. These are what we call old believer Russians. And I don't know if that's a PC term anymore or not, but I grew up knowing that they were old believer Russians. These are people that settled in the Mid-Willamette Valley in the 50s. And most of that generation no longer lives, but younger generations keep up the traditions. They escaped communist Russia in the 50s because they're Orthodox. They are Christians, and they are not allowed to practice that faith in communist rule. So the churches went underground, and they were sought out and murdered. Then they thought, well, this isn't good. Let's get out of this country. And they tried to escape, and many of them were killed at the border. Some got out. Very few families intact got out because it was horrible. The ones that somehow escaped got into South America, migrated north into North America. And a share of them settled in the Mid-Willamette Valley. Right? And I believe they settled in the Mid-Willamette Valley because these are the most incredible farmers you would ever meet in your life. And the Mid-Willamette Valley has sandy loam soil, which is some of the most fertile soil you'd ever see in your life. Right? And that's where they settled. Okay? This happens to be an old believer Russian family. Me telling you that story How trustful do you suppose this guy is of government? Not at all. He is sitting there at his daughter's side. I am just opposite him on the backboard, looking at him. He gets her tucked in. He scoops her up. He's walking away. And I said, "Sir, what are you doing?" He goes, "Well, she's coming home with me. That's my belief." I said, "I don't know if you can do that." I said, "Wait just a minute." I motioned for a deputy to come over. I said, "Dad wants to take his daughter home." Deputy's being very kind. He says, "Sir, you can't take your daughter home." He's going, "But you don't understand my beliefs." He's going, "But sir, you can't just take your daughter home." Another deputy behind him is hearing this conversation. He's got the medical examiner responding about 30 minutes away on a brick cell phone. And I watch this deputy saying, "Hey, Emmy, just a heads up, they want to take the body home." And the phone goes like this because Emmy's yelling, "Don't let them take the body, for crying out loud." So that's what's kind of going on in the background. And this guy's going, the dad's going, "You don't understand my beliefs." And finally the deputy, because the guy's not going to listen to him, the deputy says, "Sir, she belongs to the state of Oregon. It's the law." All right. So I can only imagine in this guy's head is, you know what, the government that I escaped from, if I didn't do what they told me to do, they would kill me or my family members, because they were doing that. I escape at risk of life and limb, probably lost family and friends in that escape, and worked my way up into the free world where a drunk driver kills my daughter, and this government's going to take her away from me. And he's upset. I don't blame him. And I don't know what to say. And I'm the guy that's supposed to know what to say. I don't know what to say. And he's crying. You don't understand. And I don't know, what the hell do I say to that? I got a chaplain to the scene. And this is her right here. And as soon as she gets there, she comes up, she kneels down next to me along the backboard where we've got him to set her back down. He's going, "They don't understand my beliefs." And she looks at him and she says, "So tell me about your beliefs." And the guy just went, ah. It immediately changed the scene. Somebody cared enough to ask. For him to talk to her, he's got to get cognitive, because that's where the language centers are. And he looked at her and he quit crying and he said, "We're Russian Orthodox. When our loved ones die, they get taken home, the body is bathed, there's a religious rite, and then we bury them. And in Oregon, if you get somebody in the ground within 24 hours, you don't have to embalm them. And that's what they need to do." Well, that makes sense. Not that we can facilitate that, but that makes sense why he would be upset. Okay? But what the scene shifted. Literally, I felt the physical shift. Remember, before that happened, I was not having a good day. When she made that crazy little comment, "Tell me about your beliefs," literally, I felt it. Literally. To the extent of, I grabbed the firefighter, go get a camera off the apparatus, snap a couple photos. Now, for you young people, this is when cameras actually had film in them, which is a little strip of stuff that exposed, and anyway. And those are the photographs that you are seeing. We felt it. Everybody on the scene felt it. Law enforcement felt it because they told us so. Private provider medics came by the firehouse. I don't know what you guys did out there. It was pretty amazing, whatever that was. And to make a long story short, when the ME never hung up the phone. He was going to make dang sure that body was still there when he got there. And when he pulls up, we're probably 30 minutes post all of this, he comes up, and he'd been knowing what was going on the whole time. He came up, identified himself, asked if we could move the family back for a little bit. He spent about 15 minutes with their daughter, came back up to mom and dad, and said, "There's no doubt what happened here. You can take your daughter home." You're frickin' kidding me. Really? Wow. Now, I was teaching this class in Chicago, Illinois in the early 90s. It's a Chicago firefighter in the back of the room. Crusty old firefighter, whatever your stereotype is. Hair disheveled, faded uniform, shirt untucked, grouchy, dozing off, in and out of consciousness when I'm talking, because this is all touchy-feely BS. He's that guy. When I got to this part of the presentation, this exact photograph, the exact same story, it's like he woke up and he's back there flailing his arms. I thought he was choking for a moment, but he was just flailing his arms trying to get my attention. "Yes, sir, did you have a question?" He goes, "Hey," he says, "I bet your incidents of stress debriefings have gone through the roof, all this touchy-feely BS you guys are doing out there in Oregon." And when he said that, it's like, well, you know what? I re-looked at this. I remember this day fairly well. Right? And that's a great question. Here's the thing. We actually left this scene feeling good about what we were able to do. And you don't debrief what feels good. We don't do debriefings where I work, only unless it's a line of duty thing. We don't debrief this stuff. Now, don't get me wrong. Did we get back in our apparatus after this and get back to the kitchen table and talk about this? Absolutely, because I don't like drunk drivers killing people's kids. But we talked about it around the kitchen table. Did we need to do a debriefing? No, because we felt good about what we were able to accomplish. And you don't debrief what feels good. We don't do debriefings. Right? So, and as you're going to learn, there's now science behind why we don't do debriefings as much anymore. What's going on up here when that chaplain can go, tell me about that, shift the scene, what's going on in Tim's brain when she does that would cause him to feel a shift. But it actually, this stuff works. So when this program finally started rolling out via trial and error, but we're kind of getting in on it. My first place of employment had yellow fire engines. I will apologize for that, but they were the ones that took the risk and hired me, and that's where I went to work. These are brothers of the lady on the backboard. They have every right to be there as long as they don't interfere with me and my crew. Right? And we identify them by, can I help you with something? That's our sister. Okay, come with me. Can I help you with something? Well, you got the off-ramp closed. We're trying to get to the mall, and the sale's going on. Oh, I forgot about that sale. Oh, my God. Okay, quick. Run to your car. Get in your car. And when that car in front of you starts to move forward, you go follow them. I'm being facetious. If she's conscious on the backboard, we're telling her everything that we're doing. They're hearing it. They know their sister's getting the best care she can get out of a yellow fire engine. If she's unconscious, then I'll tell these two guys exactly what we're doing so they know their sister's getting the best care she can get. It's as simple as that. This is the place I retired from, which happens to have red apparatus. Yeah. So I retired, right? Head-on collision. The car that you see in camera is really the only injury, and he has got his legs pinned, his dash is rolled on him. He's got his legs pinned in there, and looks like he's kissed the steering wheel with his face. So he's bloody, and when the accident first happens, he's scrambling trying to get out, and he finds his cell phone, and he calls not 911, he calls his wife. Sweetheart, I've been in a horrible accident. I am trapped. I'm hurt really bad, and here's where I'm at. Come help. Thankfully, somebody does call 911. So when I get there, there's an apparatus there. I'm pulling up with the staff vehicle right here. I'm looking in my rearview mirror, and I'm bracing for impact because the Jeep's coming at me just really hot. Like, oh, they're going to hit. And she ends up getting it sideways and getting into the oncoming lane, and she misses me. And she comes running around my vehicle. I quickly roll down my window. Stop! Hey, what are you doing? How can I help you? And she says, my husband's in that truck. I just talked to him on the phone. Stay right here. I'll be right back. Now, people in crisis tend to take directions fairly well because they lost the ability to think. They need direction. They will follow what you tell them to do. Stay here. I walked up to the lieutenant, and I don't have to go, it's my organization's belief, because this is my organization. Hey, Lieutenant, I got the wife back there with your permission. You mind me bringing her up here? She'll stay with me. He goes, yeah, do it, because that was our culture there. He doesn't care. Cool. I went back to the wife. Here's the thing. Your husband is still trapped in his truck. Now, if you want to go up there, you're going to have to stay with me. We can't get in the way. I will allow that, but here's a couple things you need to know. Your husband is very uncomfortable. He's making noise. He is uncomfortable. And his face is bloody. He does not look good. And the engine company up there is making a lot of noise. They're using power tools to get him out of that vehicle. If you'd like to stay with me and you want to go up there, we will allow that. And that's her in the jeans right there. And I'm just telling her everything that's going on. She knows her husband is getting the best possible care he can get there, because that's what she needs to know. The thing is, if we don't identify her and tell her what to do, where's she going to go? She's going to get in your way. She's going to head straight to her husband because she wants to make sure he's being taken care of. And next thing you know, there she is, and you're restraining her, and then the scene's not going to go as well. And I'm not saying you have to have an extra set of hands. I just happened to be there when she got there. But if I wasn't there and she ran up on these guys, they should have said, whoa, hey, can I help you with something? That's my husband. Stay right there. We'll give you updates as we get him. Right now we're trying to get him out of his truck. All right? Stay right there. And the result would have been the same. Just treat him as if it was your relative showing up. Okay, just stay right there. I will give you information as I get it. And that's how this really works. I morphed this picture a little bit. It's a 40-year-old guy. It's late afternoon. His wife walks to the grocery store. In her absence, he has made a little man cave in the back of his garage. He's got a TV back there. He's got a great big overstuffed chair back there. When she's gone, he consumes an entire bottle of wine. He lights a cigarette. He's got the game on, puts a cigarette in his mouth, dozes off. Cigarette drops in the cushion of the chair. We respond on a room and contents fire. Actually, a room and contents and man fire. Apparatus gets there. Firefighters go in to extinguish the fire. They find the guy in the chair and they pull him out. They get him outside. Agonal respirations, agonal heartbeat. Third-degree burns, head to toe, non-survivable burns. But they're working him because of the agonal heartbeat, agonal respirations. While they're working him, a gal comes up to the fire line tape with a couple bags of groceries. A firefighter appropriately stops her and says, "Can I help you with something, ma'am?" And she says, "This is my house. Have you seen my husband?" And he does what he thinks is the right thing. He looks over his shoulder. He goes, "Hey, Deets, come here," because I was there. So I walk up to her. "Hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm Mr. Deets. What can I do for you?" She goes, "Well, this is my house. Have you seen my husband?" Okay. So I'm going to have a conversation with her and give her doses at the same time. "We came to this house because your neighbor saw smoke coming out of the garage and called 911. When we arrived, the firefighters went into your garage to put the fire out. They found your husband back in a little room where the fire was. Apparently he's got a little room back there, and they quickly pulled him out. But when they pulled him out, he was not breathing. He didn't have a heartbeat. Right now they are working to restore that. If you want to go be closer to your husband, as long as we don't get in the way, maybe you stay with me, we will allow that. But I also need to tell you, your husband is badly burnt. As a matter of fact, you're probably not going to recognize him as your husband. I'm sorry. But it's your choice. What do you suppose she chose? She chose to. Did I traumatize her? Here's one of the things I've had to learn. If I was to clear this photograph up, you and I would see a badly burnt body. What's the wife see? She sees her husband. That's the way they see it. I have done this a long time, sometimes with people that have been involved with crime scenes where they don't find their loved one for weeks or months, and when they do find them, they're decomped, they're skeletonized. And then those pictures get hidden from the family because they shouldn't see that horrible, horrible stuff. So they get hidden in the courts, then they get hidden in every parole hearing where the guy that killed them wants to get out. They hide that stuff from the family. And eventually that family will get a hold of those photographs, and here's what they will tell you. I imagined it much worse. Because, see, this is still my son. Where you and I would go, "Oh, no, it's my kid." That's the way they see it. All we can do is be completely honest of what's there and let them make the choice. Now, in an ideal world, this guy would have been covered up. I could have told her what was under the blanket and allowed her to uncover what she chose to see. And if I would have told her he's badly burnt, she would not have uncovered anything. But we didn't have that opportunity. He wasn't at that point yet. All right? And so then all I can do is be honest. And it's her choice. No, we are not traumatizing them if you fully explain and you give them the choice. All right? Obviously, if we're in full protective gear or armed, we can't let civilians right into these scenes. But what we can do is identify them, remove them from the herd of the people there with their cell phones trying to capture a picture of somebody else's tragedy, put them in a space where I can give them updates and give them information, including why we can't get any closer. Just treat them like a VIP, right? And that's the imprint that you're going to leave with them. If we had a long time and we're not going to do this today, I would put you in the place of being the person out of balance. And I would tell you this is your favorite brother. This is the guy that when he walks in the room, literally the room lights up. He is that guy. You just love being around him. And you don't always get to be around him because you're adults and he's doing his thing, you're doing yours. But he comes over and watches the Super Bowl with you guys on a Sunday. Right? You guys have a blast. You know, you're brothers or brothers and sisters, and you're messing around with them. You love this guy. Super Bowl gets over. You know, you wrestle around a little bit. You love each other. You give each other a hug. He's got to go down the street. He's going to catch the bus so he can get back to you know his house on their side of town. So you're cleaning up, you know, the chips and dip and all the beer bottles all over the place because you watched the game, and you start hearing like stuff going on, sirens and stuff outside. It's like, what the hell's going on there? So you head down your sidewalk, you look down the street, and you see that, you start walking towards it, and whatever you see here, you know that this is your brother. And now you're like this. And when you go like this, everything you see, hear, smell, taste, and touch is now going to be permanently imprinted in your brain for the rest of your life. So from a brother or sister's perspective, Tell me what's going to imprint. From a brother or sister's perspective, not a firefighter's perspective. What do you see here? He's missing a shoe. What else? He's prone. Yep. Mm-hmm. He's alone. Absolutely. You guys are right on track with all this stuff. Here's going to be your 4 needs when you're there. Now, this is just been from my experience. There tends to be 4 commonalities when people show up at these scenes. Need number 1 is you need to be with your brother right there, right now. You want to be right with the body. Need number 2 is, if we're holding you back, you want to get to him before he gets cold. You will tell me that if for some reason we're holding you back, you're going to say, I need to get up before he gets cold. Because that happens all the time. Need number 3 is you want your brother to look comfortable even in death. Need number 4 is you would want to reconcile any differences you may have had in life with your brother right there, right now. Now, that's just been the 4 commonality themes in my experience. So let me ask you this. You ever sleep in you get warm, you put your feet out from under the blanket to kind of cool yourself off? Yeah? I know it's kind of irrational because this is a dead person, but in your mind, could your brother be getting colder faster than he should because his feet are sticking out? So how could we as firefighters prevented that from even entering your head? Cover him up. Yeah. Does your brother look comfortable? He's prone on asphalt, yeah? Have you ever been prone on asphalt before? Yeah, once in high school. I have never done it again. Yeah? How could we have prevented that from entering your mind without moving the body? Cover him. The mere act of fully covering somebody. And sometimes these full-grown adults takes 2 blankets. But the mere act of fully covering just took away 50% of your concerns. That ain't bad. Let's say I am the person tasked with facilitating what we're going to do with you if you show up at the scene. I will probably come up to you, identify myself. I'll probably make sure you are who you are, and that, in fact, is your brother. Right? So we'll maybe have that conversation. I will say, stay right here. I'll be right back. I'm going to go to the police agency working this call, say, hey, something to the effect of my organization's belief if a family member showed up or loved one's been seriously injured or dead, they should have time with the body. With your permission, I've got the brother or sister back there. It's okay if I bring them forward, give them a few minutes, then I'll make sure they get support and we'll get them off the scene. And they're going to tell me, yes, you can do that. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to find the paramedic that maybe tended to your brother or the paramedic declared your brother dead. And I'm going to find them. I'm going to say, tell me what's under that blanket because I don't need to see it. Okay? Then I'm going to come back to you and say something to the effect of, I am so sorry your brother's dead. Now, if you'd like to go up there and spend a few moments with them, we're going to allow that. I will help facilitate that for you. But I need to tell you a couple things. I've been told that it appears your brother may have been hit by a car. Sorry. I've also been told by the medic that treated your brother or tended to your brother that he's got some facial damage and you may not recognize him as your brother. And again, I'm so sorry about that. But if you'd like to go up there, we will allow that. And you're going to say yes. So you and I are going to kind of walk up to this body together. When we get right about here, I'm going to disengage because this is between you and your brother, not between you and your brother and Tim. Knowing that there's some damage to the body, in my experience, here's what you're going to do. You're going to probably get down on your knees. You're going to hit your brother in the back. Make sure you know where head and feet are. Find the shoulder. Follow the arm down over the blanket. Reach under where his hand is, and you'll have a conversation. What are you going to say? I have no idea because it's none of my business. This is between you and your brother. And when I think enough time has passed where we need to start moving along, I might re-engage with you, probably get down at your level, maybe put my hand on your back or your shoulder and say, I am so sorry this has happened, but we need to back out of here so these men and women can figure out exactly what happened to your brother and get him moved to a safe place. And that's how this works. Here's another thing. It doesn't have to be me. Here's the last thing I want to have happen. You come into this classroom, you know what, whenever you got here, 10:30, is that when we're supposed to start? 10:30. You sit down, you find out what we're going to talk about, and you go, oh, great, one more responsibility. That's not what I want. My job is to reduce stress. Right? My job is to reduce stress, not add on. If you don't want to do this, I'm not going to make you do this. Let's say I'm the paramedic and I actually worked your brother, and the last thing I want to do is show you my failure, because that's the way my brain works. I'm not going to do it with you. Sorry, it's not me. I'm going to take a bye. It's called self-care, not selfish. And you got to be okay with that. All right? So if a call Is this you're just not into it? Cool, get somebody else to do it. My crew that I work with, any one of them could do it. If I said I got to take a buy on this one because maybe something, whatever, one of my other guys would step up. Your job is to recognize that when family members are there, somebody needs to engage with them. Maybe you get a chaplain to the scene. Just make sure somebody's got to engage with them. I'm also trying to give you the tools if you get caught because you turn around and there's somebody there and is asking you something, I'm going to give you the tools to leave an imprint that you cared so you can walk away feeling good about what you were able to accomplish there. Okay? So my job is to reduce stress. It doesn't have to always be you. Okay, you with me on that? Yeah. We talked about history and why it's important to cover. These are Vans tennis shoes, Vans, right? Marketed in the early 80s to skateboarders, right? The punks, the kids that wanted to be independent from their family. Vans were not cheap, so not every kid could get them, even though they all wanted them. And parents come out to identify their child, and that's the Vans, and that's what happens when your kids become independent before you knew they were ready. And not only are they showing me, the parent, that, you're showing everybody that drives by how horrible a parent I am. Well, who the hell would have thought of that? How we could have prevented that from even entering their head? You cover the body. It's really as simple as that, because every scene has a history that we just don't know. This young lady turned 16 on a Monday. The day of her birthday, her dad takes her out of school early and takes her to the Department of Motor Vehicles. She scores her driver's license first time, which is not easy in the state of Oregon, and I know that because it took me 3 times to get my driver's license. Back before cell phones. They go home, she's on the phone, she's calling all of her friends. This is a good day for a young lady. 16 and a driver's license, same day. She's excited. She saves her best friend's phone call till last. She hangs up the phone. Dad's in the room. She's going to throw me a party. Dad, she's going to throw me a party. And Dad's going, cool, I know that young lady. I know her parents. I know where they live. Sweetheart, I am so excited for you. Absolutely, I am excited for you. When's this gala take off, and when's it in so I can get you there and get you home? And she's like, Dad, I got a driver's license. And he's, sweetheart, you've had it for an hour. She's like, but Dad, he says, my dear, you want to go to the party, I will drop you off, I will pick you up. I don't want to hear another word about it. For the rest of the week, she obeyed. Not another word about driving the car. This is Monday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday morning, she's up before the family, and when they get up, breakfast is ready to go. She cooked them breakfast every morning. She gets home from school, she's making beds, she's vacuuming the carpets, she's doing some weeding in the flower beds, she's doing laundry, not just hers, but family laundry. And Friday morning at the breakfast table, when she joins them after preparing their breakfast, for the 4th time, Dad goes, sweetheart, your mom and I have been talking. You have been amazing girl. And we decided to let you take the car tonight just because you're such a wonderful daughter. Well, man, 0 to 100 excited now, right? Woo-hoo, I get to drive. And then she goes, hey, can I wear makeup? Because she's never been allowed to wear makeup her entire life. She's been 16, 4 days? Dad would tell you, oh, my dear, you should have stopped in your head on this one. But he says she's got these big eyelashes, and she bats them at you, and I caved in, and I said, yeah, go ahead. They get called that evening to identify the contents of their car. Now, this room's kind of bright. If this room was dark, there's something in this slide would pop out because the firefighters did an amazing job illuminating this scene. And what do you suppose pops out when the parents get there? It's that fingernail polish worn for the very first time. That just pops out red in the night. That's what happens when you let your little girls grow up before you knew they were ready. Well, that's a horrible story. How have we could have prevented that from spinning in their head when they got there? You cover that stuff up. And if she's wrapped up in that car and you can't cover her completely, think about covering the car. Now, towards the end of my career, I'm working behavioral health. I worked 22 years on the line. Last 8 was on days. Very rarely when I'm working days do I turn a radio on, because they were pulling about 150 calls in a 24-hour period back then, and that's just, I didn't want to listen to all that. I'm in my office one day, and I can only assume I must have been bored. I had a portable radio sitting right next to my computer, so I turned the portable radio on. Just as they dispatched a box alarm on a motor vehicle accident. Now, that's quite unusual. In my 30 years in the fire service, I've never heard of a structural assignment going to a motor vehicle accident. Got them 3 engines, a ladder, a heavy, and a BC. Well, that's got to be quite an accident. I'm just thinking, well, obviously dispatch has some information that warrants that. So my ears are perked up. I'm listening. And as the apparatus is arriving, I can hear by the tone of their voice, this ain't a normal incident. I can hear it. And the incident commander gets there, or the BC gets there, he takes command, dispatch from command, strike a second. 3 more engines, another ladder, another heavy, another chief. That is a ton of resources. So I'm listening. Now they've got 2 helicopters flying patients. 20 minutes into this, dispatch from command, I need 3 chaplains to respond to the scene. 10 minutes later, command from dispatch, no chaplain is responding to the request. Okay, I'm the behavioral health guy. I'm there. Chances are you got civilians showing up who are struggling and whatnot. So I added myself to the box. I pull up to the scene. It's a 2-lane highway. Obviously the road is closed. I pull up to the scene. I park behind a ladder truck who's parked in the oncoming lane, and because there's this traffic stopped here, and there's just hundreds of people along the road standing there. So the ladder company's here, cool. So I walk around the truck, and as I'm walking around the truck, there's a vacant field off to my left, and about 200 feet out in that field, about from here, maybe to that, almost to the fence there, and that might be even a little bit farther than 200 feet. So it's out there quite a ways, is a van on its top. Above the van is a news helicopter filming footage live, apparently. There's not a soul out there, at least that I was aware of. Around the van is medical waste carnage. It looks like Custer had his last stand out there. If you've ever been to the Custer's last, that's what it looks like, what happened out there. Just medical stuff spread everywhere around that van. It's like, oh my God. So I don't know what was going on out there. So I continue my journey around the truck. Now you have to understand this. Truck companies where I retired from were the specialty forces of the fire service. They are the Navy SEALs. You cannot work a ladder truck unless you're invited into that house. And they only pick the cream of the crop. Because when you work a ladder truck, your 24 hours is you eat, you train, you lift weights. You eat, you train, you lift weights. You eat, you train, you lift weights. You do that 24 hours a day. Drive by a ladder house at night, the chances are they're on the roof in the middle of the night because they don't stop. They want to work at night. Right? They are the best in the business. Right? They're the ones you want at your scene. So as I walk around the truck and knowing that they are the elite forces, the captain of that truck is leaning against the grill. Now, we run 3 shifts, 24/48s, A, B, and C. Lieutenant, lieutenant, captain. Every station has lieutenant, lieutenant, captain, which means the captain is the next level there because he's not only responsible for his crew, he's responsible for those other lieutenants and how they manage their crews and the budget for the entire. He is, in fact, the king or queen of the house. We have female captains as well. So that's an elite spot. So it's the captain of the truck that I see, leaning against the grill. I'm walking around this way. He looks at me. He makes eye contact with me. He turns, and he breaks down sobbing. And then he turns away because he doesn't want me to see him crying. It's like, okay, wow, right? This is our elite force doing this. As he turns away, coming across here is a hosman. And he's bending over, rolling up a coil of hose. And as he's doing that, he's watering the asphalt with tears. What the hell happened here? And I look up beyond him to the other side of the road. There's 4 police officers. Looks like they're interviewing witnesses. They're teared up. The witnesses seem to be all teared up. It's like, criminy sake. So I find the command post. I talk to the battalion chief. What can I do to help? And he says, I'm glad you're here. Let me give you an update on what's going on. There was a contractor going to a job site. He stopped by a rental yard, picked up a short-haul concrete trailer, and he started to mix a batch of concrete on his way to his job site. He said he's going about 55 miles an hour. His trailer hitch broke. That concrete trailer got into the oncoming lane and hit that van you see out there in that field. In that van was a mother and her 7 little girls. Little girls at about 1.5 year increments, about from 1 to 10, or however that fills out. All her daughters were in that van. 6 of those little girls and the mom are critically injured. We don't know how many of them are going to survive, but they've all been flown to the trauma centers. There's 1 little girl still out there. She's deceased. He says, I called for chaplains mostly because the contractor is that guy sitting on the road over there because he can't stand, he's that distraught because he feels 100% responsible for everything that's happened here. So that's why I called for the chaplain. And then there was a couple witnesses here that, I mean, you see those people, that's what the chaplains are for. But he said, I'm glad you're here because look at our people. What do we do? I said, got it. So I started talking to our people. And here's what I found. That little girl that's still out in that van, right? When they got there, she was hanging upside down in her seat with her eyes open. Every medic that was out there in that field would tell you, she looked at me. She looked at me. I'm taking her sisters out. She's watching me. Well, she was dead when they got there, but their brain's going, man, she keeps looking at me. So she's connecting with all those. The truck guys that I'm talking to are going, she's got the exact same pink Costco sweatpants on my little girl wears. So the moral of the story is the little girl out in that van connected with all those responders, connected with them, right? Remember a couple months ago we talked about how we personalize stuff? Well, they all personalize that. That makes sense to me. So I went back to that truck officer. I said, you guys got Visqueen on this thing, yeah? Rolls of black plastic for covering holes in roofs and things like that. He says, yeah? I said, once you get your crew, take a roll of black plastic out there, throw it over that van. And he did. He threw it over that van, and when he threw the plastic over the van, that happened. What do you see? There ain't nothing there. You see the news helicopter leave. There's nothing to film here but a pile of black plastic. I'm not a fan of the media. You need to leave. You see people who were once teary-eyed, look, it's gone. They wipe their face off. They re-engage. It looks like a normal fire ground now. They're re-engaging. There's banter amongst each other. They're getting their apparatus restored because it's no longer there. Now, if the dad showed up, and he didn't, if let's say dad would have showed up on this, and I'm there, I can talk to him about what's in that field before he sees what's out in that field. I can give him doses before he realizes what's going on. If he chooses to go out there, I can walk out there with him. I can lift up the plastic, let him slip underneath so he has some privacy with this little girl, which tells him that we cared enough to give him that privacy so one of these idiots over here is not catching a video of it. Right? Which helps me do better, both of us do better in the long run. That's why we do this. Now, we very rarely have to do this. But if you have one of those calls that's kind of tugging at you and now you're restoring your apparatus and it's like, oh, like this, that's tough. And you cover the body to the best of your ability, but you can still see what's going on. Think about covering the entire car. I've been told you guys don't carry Visqueen, but you have salvage covers. Cover the entire car up with salvage covers, and then when you leave, just grab it and leave. Right? But what it does, it protects us. And it keeps the idiots from getting pictures, which drive me nuts. Yeah? And then what are your guidelines doing this? If I pull somebody out of bed and I work them and they die, I'm going to put them back into bed. My very first, my very first organization, the county that I was first a paramedic in, I was putting this program together for them, and I was working there, and I declared a death in the field with a gentleman. His wife was present. We did everything right. We gave her a moment with her husband. This is before we removed our equipment, because we didn't know. I was always told, getting hired, that we never touch the equipment. It stays on the body, and so I did. And I let the wife have some time with her husband, and she got on the floor with him, and she laid her head on his chest. And it was kind of beautiful to watch. I'm assuming sometimes they just probably hung out that way, growing up together. But when she did that and put some pressure on his chest, foam came out of the tube, and I thought, oh, jeez, nobody should have to see that, right? So when we got back to quarters, I called the county medical examiner. I said, here's the program that we're using here. This is what happened today. Is there ever a chance I could extubate somebody or take an IV line out? Is that ever possible? And his response was, if you're in a home and it's a natural death, he says, I don't know why you guys leave your equipment on the body. He says, take it off, just document it. Oh, okay. So it was after that we would do that. Now the organization that I retired from, when I got hired there, we were putting this program into place there. They protected 3 different counties. I called all 3 county medical examiners. The story was the same for them. This is what I'm trying to install. If you guys are more than 20, 30 minutes out, is there ever a chance we can get our equipment off and let the loved ones have some time with their people? And all 3 medical examiners said this: if it's an in-home natural death, to the best of your knowledge, and you have family members there that you want to allow them to have some time with their loved one, and we are a little bit out, here's what I ask. All three of them said, here's what we ask. You call the responding deputy, call them on the phone, tell them what you want to do, and just let them give you permission. And then document. For the last 25 years, a paramedic has never been denied a request to move a body, to extubate, to take an IV line out. They've never been denied. The medical examiner says, thanks for calling, make sure you document what you're doing. Now, I have no idea how that works here in Pierce County. I do travel a lot. There's more states in this country that would not allow that than would allow that. Oklahoma does not allow you to cover a body at all. Even a natural death, you can't cover it. They're worried about transfer of evidence, even on natural deaths. And when I'm in Oklahoma, I'm not there to tell those men and women, oh, you have to change that law. No, you need to work within the means of the law. If your county medical examiner prohibits that, and grandpa is mowing the grass and dies out there, and he's laying out in the front yard, and it's starting to rain, and that kind of looks bad, then I need to tell the family, I know that looks kind of bad. We're not allowed to cover, grandpa, because the medical examiner wants to make sure he knows what caused your grandpa's death, and they're worried that if we put something on his body, that might interfere with that. Please work within the means. Right? So I don't know what's allowed out here and what's not, so you need to find that out, because I am a huge advocate of putting them back into bed and giving them some time. Yeah? Put them back into bed? Good for you. Cool. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, yeah. Work within the means here, right? That's very cool. Okay, we talked about things that don't work. What works? I used to have a whole list of stuff that you could say, and then I thought one of you guys is going to put that in a flip chart. You're going to sell it. People can put it in their back pockets, and then you're going to go out to the scene and go, oh, this, I am so sorry you lost it, and it's not going to be natural. So here's what I did. I got rid of all those phrases, and this is the only one I'm going to put up here because it's easy to remember and it works. I am so sorry. I am sorry your husband's died. I'm so sorry this has happened. Whatever. It works if you mean it. Here's another thing. You don't have to, but it's okay to share. That call kind of is tough. And here's the only reason I put this up here. I did a Thursday morning coffee clash with my engine company. Clash, not clash. 10 minutes of stand-up comedy, 10 minutes, this is what my fire department's doing for you this month. We're walking across the parking lot. We get to the apparatus and we hear, hey, wait! And we turn around, and a guy is running across the parking lot towards us. So we sit there and we wait. He comes up to us. He is all out of breath. He goes, I need to tell you guys something before you leave. I said, well, what, sir? He goes, 10 years ago when my wife died, he goes, you guys were there. Do you know what I remember about that day? And my crew and I, we kind of did side glances like, oh, crap, what the hell did we do? I mean, that's where your brain goes, right? What did we do? And I said, sir, number one, I'm sorry to hear about your wife. And number two, no, sir, I don't know what you remember about that day, but I'm sorry. And he goes, no. He says, when my wife died, you guys, now it wasn't me, nor my crew. It was somebody from my organization, but it wasn't me, right? So I can't take credit for this. He says, when my wife was declared dead, a firefighter came up to me and told me it's hard to see somebody lose somebody they love. Then he looks at me and he goes, you guys really care, don't you? And for a moment in my life, a very uncomfortable moment, I was speechless. Because I can only imagine. And the way he's telling the story, it sounds like he and his wife really loved each other, just the way he was talking about her. So 10 years ago had to be one of the worst days of his life, to lose his loved one. And what's his takeaway? How nice a firefighter was. Are you kidding me? That's your takeaway? If I could leave that imprint in a human being's life once, my job on earth is complete. I'm gone. To leave that kind of impression on somebody's life. Well, we get to do that every time we turn a wheel. You have that opportunity to leave that imprint, that's their takeaway. How a firefighter cared. Wow, that's why we do this, right? The impact. Now, if so inclined, right? If so inclined, can do some amazing things. And sometimes I can't think of anything to say. There's incredible power in touch. Now, if you go like this, and they go like this, don't chase them around. Not everybody's receptive to it, but most people are. Right? We also use this when I can't speak the same language as the person that's grieving. And this is a universal, oh man, this is a tough day. Right? And it really works. It really works. This is how you flip a scene. Right? This is how you flip a scene. So again, all this stuff is based on experience. We were working a cardiac arrest in a home, elderly gentleman, allowing the wife to be in the room, dosing out the bad news, eventually get to, I'm sorry, your husband's dead. And then I come up to her and say, so here's what's going to happen now. I'm going to call for a deputy medical examiner. Chances are it's going to be a police officer, right? Now, a police officer is going to get here not because there's a crime or you're because in any trouble, but in the state of Oregon, anytime somebody dies outside of the care of a physician, it's required for us to get a medical examiner on the scene. So you're going to get a police officer coming to your house. It's going to give you a heads up. You're not in trouble, right? And then my crew is, while we're waiting for that police officer, my crew is going to get their equipment off your husband's body. If we pull him out of bed, we'll put him back in. If we didn't pull him out of bed, is there a blanket you'd like us to cover him with? Do you want us to put a pillow under his head? Do you want the head covered or not? I ask all those questions. And while my crew is doing that, you and I, ma'am, are going to come into the kitchen. I need to have you sit at the table with me because I need to get some more information about your husband for my paperwork. And then when my crew's ready to go and you're ready to go, he is all yours. Yeah, and that's how I would do it. So I'm sitting at the kitchen table with this woman, and she is sobbing. Right? And I'm asking her questions about past medical history, maybe where the prescription drugs are kept, and she's just sobbing. She's looking down at the table and she's crying, which is really, really sad. Now, I'm not that smart, so a lot of this is just happenstance. I happen to look up on the wall above the kitchen table, and right there is a retirement plaque from the Southern Pacific Railroad, and the name on the plaque, hey, it's the same name on my chart. I just looked at her and said, hey, I see your husband retired from the railroad. Now, she hasn't looked at me this whole time, and she looked up, went like this, got cognitive, and she gave me this amazing history lesson of the Southern Pacific Railroad's development through the Mid-Willamette Valley and her husband's role in that. I got that, which was a cool gift. She got the impression this guy cared enough to ask. It flipped the scene. She can't talk like that unless she gets into the cognitive brain. It flipped the scene. And so now I got to take that back and teach everybody I work with, hey, this works. Let's try this. This is how, this is how you get things done. And firefighters started doing that. You get those uncomfortable moments. Maybe you're waiting for an ME. You got the body over here. You got the family gathering over here. It's like, no. How long have you guys been married? What did you guys used to enjoy doing together? Oh, man, that sounds like fun. When was the last time you were able to do something like that? Because who else is going to talk to him like that? Everybody else is going to go, oh, I am so sorry. Oh, you should be over this by now. Or have you thought of doing this? Or that's what other people are going to talk to him like. Talk to him like they're still married. They'd love to tell you that story. And they got to be cognitive to tell you the story. And what you're doing is you're leaving an imprint that you cared enough to ask. Just like, tell me about your beliefs. It works. It works. All right, let's fly through these. These are pretty standard. We can all agree that people get old and they die, right? You get old and you die. It tends not to really get us too wrapped up unless it looks like a relative of ours or something like that. Right? You dose out the bad news. You can leave an imprint that you cared. Be respectful of the body. You do all those things. And those are pretty straightforward bread and butter calls. The kids thing, it's not bread and butter because kids aren't supposed to die. It's as simple as that. I have a hard time with putting protocols for pediatrics in black and white. I don't think it can be. That's going to be the most difficult decision you ever make in your life, whether to start resuscitation or not, whether to transport or not. The most difficult decisions you will ever make. And here's where I have a problem with black and white. I'm at a paramedic in service that's required where I used to work to get job-specific CEs, right? So there's 150 paramedics in an auditorium, and today is going to be pediatric day, so it's going to be 4 hours of lectures and protocols and all that kind of stuff, and then 4 hours of practicum to keep your paramedics cert up. And then they bring in expertises in the field. So in the morning, we got 2 physician advisors in the auditorium. One of them is a pediatric ED doc who's a specialist, works at Oregon Health Sciences University, which is a teaching hospital. It's also a level 1 trauma center. And he's throwing up case reviews on the board to the 150 paramedics in the room. He throws a case upon the board of a SIDS. And the name on the, and I'm sitting in the back of the room because I'm the behavioral health guy, but I still have a paramedic cert, but I'm not working the line anymore. He throws up a SIDS on the board. And the name on the chart, hey, it's the 2 guys sitting next to me. Hey, this is your chart. They're going to do your chart. And then that doc looks at these two guys, and in front of the room, in front of their peers, says, "How dare you bring a dead baby into my hospital and interrupt my emergency room?" That's the exact quote. And the room went silent. Now, you got me, who's at the end of my career, retirement eligible, one bad meeting away from saying, "See ya." That's where I'm at. That's, to be honest with you, is a very fun place to be. I took offense to that statement. Nobody else is going to say anything. What are they going to do to me? So I raised my hand. Actually, I stood up because I'm in the back. He goes, "Yeah." I said, "I got to ask you a question, Doc. Were you there? Were you at this scene?" And he's grouchy. "No." I was like, no, "Hey, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just asking if you were at the scene where this took place." He says, "No." He says, "But you can't be I'm getting resources in my ED, and you bring in these kids, and they're dead, and it just disrupts everything. Quit doing that." And he's angry at these guys. Like, I'm looking at this chart, and it looks like they were dispatched to a baby not breathing. I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from here, right? Looks like they were dispatched to baby not breathing. I'm reading the document up there. Parents take him into a room where the baby's at, and yeah, it looks like the baby's been down for a while and everything, but they chose to transport, and you don't like that. And he's like, "You quit bringing me dead kids." Not arguing with you. Let me ask you this, though. Same call. I respond to a baby not breathing. Parents take me into the nursery, show me a child. My best professional opinion, this kid died hours ago. I'm not to work it. "No." Got it. I turn to Mom and Dad. "I'm so sorry, your baby's dead." Dad gets in my face, and he says, "Do something. He was crying 5 minutes ago." "Doc, what would you like me to do now?" What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? I mean, it's quiet. Answer me. What do you want me to do? Want me to call this guy a liar? What do you want me to do? See, here's my problem. You weren't at the scene. And you teach us, particularly kids, we not only look at the child, we look at the environment, we look at the parents, we look at the big picture on children, yeah? And you teach these men and women in this room to make a decision based on their best professional experience. Whatever that professional experience was or expertise was, these two guys chose to transport that kid, and I take offense as to the way you're handling that. So there's non-disciplinary investigations where I come from. The only way they can fire me is to lie, cheat, or steal. But there are consequences to doing what I did. That's why everybody else stayed quiet. But I don't care, because I'm at that point in my career. The consequences for Tim for calling out a doc in front of a group of people was I had to go to Oregon Health Sciences University, and I had to teach this very class to their ER fellows, which are docs learning to specialize in emergency department. It's like, bad boy, I don't care. I don't want to teach in this class. And so I taught it to them. That was my, not punishment, it's my consequences. Right? That's the problem with black and white. I used to teach paramedics. Listen, if for whatever reason you decide that this child might be salvageable and you should transport. Hospitals are better prepared to deal with grieving parents. They have social workers. If the child dies in the ED or is delivered dead, they'll put them in a safe room with a rocking chair. Mom and dad get to rock the baby. Hugely important for mom and dad. I don't know if I want to facilitate that in the field. I am also fully aware that when a doctor says, "I'm sorry, everything's been done for your baby," I might take that a little bit more seriously than when a young paramedic says, "I'm sorry, everything's been done for your baby," because in our society, we tend to put doctors at a notch above paramedics. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's just what we do in a society. But then I got crews coming in to me and going, "Hey, you know what? We were dosing out the bad news, and it was the parents that said stop. We didn't transport." Well, that throws my theory out the window. I stopped at one house after a SIDS just to check in and see how they were doing. I was talking to the lieutenant. He goes, "Yeah, no, we dosed out the bad news." And again, Mom said, "You guys can stop. You've tried everything." He says, "And Mom sat in a rocking chair. I handed him her child, and she rocked it." And I said, "Ooh, are you okay with that?" He goes, "Oh, it was beautiful. It was the last chance she'd ever get to do that." So that throws my theories all out the window. You do what you think needs to be done. And you know, I didn't say it to you know, that guy at the front of the room, but if you don't like their decision to the best of their ability, then that falls on you, not them. That's a training problem, not a personnel problem. I didn't say that. I should have. I mean, what the hell? Why not? But just got to be careful. Got to be nicer to each other. I have a problem with somebody sitting in a room going through charts saying, oh, this was bad. Why'd you do that? Well, damn it, unless you were there, treat them differently. Because it's not black and white with kids. When I first started the fire, we transported dead kids when I was a young paramedic. They don't do that anymore, or do we? Do whatever's in your best professional judgment, and nobody should be busting your butt on that with kids. Right? That's my opinion, sorry. Out-of-home deaths, the only reason I put that up there is make sure you cover the entire body. Right? And if there's a piece is sticking out because they're wrapped up in machinery or something, if you can, cover the machinery as well. The grossly disfigured bodies, I tend to have like a plan A, B, and C on that. If in my best professional opinion, oh, this is horrible, the body's in pieces laying around, here's what I tend to offer. Plan A, I think you all ought to wait till your loved one gets delivered to the morgue or the mortuary where it's safe, it's quiet, it's peaceful, and you can have your moment with them there. You can spend as much time there as you want. I have never had anybody accept that from me. I always throw it out, but nobody's ever grabbed it. Plan B is I find a family advocate. This has worked for me multiple times. One time was a college kid who was home from college. He's like 20-something. His dad falls off a tractor and the implement just makes him into pieces. Yeah, and his mom was really adamant about getting out into that field. Right, and I had sent a firefighter out, and the firefighter goes, no, nobody should see that. I said, okay. So I grabbed the boy, because that's when and she's going to go out, whether I say so or not, right? Because that's her husband. I grabbed the boy, who's 20-something. I said, I'm having a hard time with the decision here. Can you help? And he's like, yeah. So we went for a walk. Now, I got him close enough to where he understood what happened without him seeing all the bad stuff. And so we stopped. You think your mom ought to see this? No. Can you go tell her? Mom, no. And she accepts that from him. I've also got them to accept it from a neighbor person that they respected. Can you go tell them? Sure. No, don't go out there. Thank you. And if that doesn't work, what I'm going to do, not that I don't cover the scene anyway, I'm going to cover the scene to the best of my ability. I'm going to be totally honest what's under that blanket or that tarp. It's their choice. And in my experience doing that, you'll see them walk right up to the edge of the blanket, right up to the edge of the tarp, and they stop. They don't look. They just want to be where the body is, right? Those 4 needs. They just need to be where the body is. And then they comfort each other there. That's what's tend to work for me, right? But you got to be honest about what's going on. Don't try to soften it, yeah? And the extremely difficult people, let me throw this again because this is all trial and error. Have a young lieutenant. Now we have most of the systems in Oregon are private provider ambulances, at least in the metro areas. So, young lieutenant gets dispatched, he's on an engine company, gets dispatched at 3 o'clock in the morning on an ambulance transport only. Well, they just dispatched a fire apparatus on that. Well, there's no ambulances in town. They're all out of service. So he's not very happy about that because the public, private don't always get along. So I can only assume on his drive out there he's grumbling to his crew. Now the crew's grumbling as well when they get to this house. He knocks on the door of the address. A 30-something-year-old lady opens the door and looks at him and said, I called for a frickin' ambulance. What the hell are you guys? Get that damn fire engine out of here. And he's like, I don't want to be here any more than you want to be here. It's going to be one of those calls. And she's going, well, get the hell out of here. He's going, can't. This is what you get when you call 911. There's no ambulances. Who's struggling? She says, you're not touching my mom. He says, oh, yeah, we're here. This is what you get. You're not touching my mom. And he wiggles his way between her to get into the house with his crew. They walk into the living room. There's a hospital bed in the corner where mom is. There's also 2 other grown women in there, and they apparently are all sisters of this woman, daughters of this woman, and then they got their families there, and the story is all 3 families live with mom in the same house. They get into the house. Mom appears to have some trouble breathing, and the lieutenant tells his paramedics to go to work, and the lady says, you are not to touch my mom. I'm telling you, don't touch her. And the officer goes, you cannot interfere with us or I will have you removed. And she's going, I'm telling you not to touch my mom. Mom's doctor's waiting at the hospital. Just get her there so he can treat her. He goes, we don't have any ambulances. She goes, you're not touching them. Paramedic tries to put a nasal cannula on this woman and it gets torn off. Lieutenant goes, you can't do that or I will remove you. 2 other times, 3 strikes, you're out. The lieutenant comes up behind her He grabs her from behind. He lifts her up, carries her across the living room, opens the door, drops her on the front porch, slams the door, and then holds it shut so she can't get back in. And this is going to shock you, I know, but that woman filed a complaint. Can you believe that? She filed a complaint with my organization. She complained. Apparently, she didn't like that. My organization, my boss, the chief, takes complaints very serious. Day one at your recruit academy, he will tell you, listen, you guys make more money than most firefighters in this state makes. You make good money, and they're paying for it. You better let them know that you are worth it, or they will get fire protection cheaper someplace else, because there's a lot of places can do it cheaper than we can. You better let them know you're worth every penny. And so when there's a complaint, oh my God, he is all over that. And there's going to be an investigation. Now remember, our investigations are non-disciplinary unless you lie, cheat, or steal, then you're fired. Non-disciplinary, but there's consequences. The investigation was done, and it was like an FBI investigation. That's how thorough they are. His consequences when the investigation was done was to call and make an appointment with the behavioral health guy on how to better interact with people in crisis. Before he comes to my office for his appointment, I have got the investigative report on my desk and I've read it. When I read the report, it all made perfect sense to me. Meaning, what could he have done different that morning? It's pretty simple. He should have done something before he carried her out. That's it. That's it. Why don't you want us to touch your mom? That's a valid question, right? If she was honest, it's in the report. Here's what would have been the response. She has a fourth sister that died last week during elective surgery. They think the doc botched it. They have lost faith in the medical community. Well, that makes sense. Mom's doc is the only person they trust. He's waiting at the hospital for her. I'm going to guess when this lady gets delivered to the ED staff is going to go through her same wrath to quit touching her, only her doc can touch her. Well, it makes sense. And if she would have told him that, he should have looked at her and said, I am so sorry for the loss of your sister. I am so sorry. I tell you what, the ambulance is probably still 30 minutes out. Your mom's having trouble breathing. Would it be okay if one of my medics has put a little tube under here to give your mom something to breathe that'll help relax her a little bit while we wait for the ambulance? If it's uncomfortable for her, we will remove it, I promise you. I don't know how that lady could have argued that. Your mom's doc might find great value if we can get a base set of vital signs here, but if we can get that here and it changes when he takes a set of vitals, because he will when she gets to the hospital, if there's a change, that might really help his course of treatment for her. So with your permission, I'm going to grab her wrist, count how many heartbeats she has in a minute, maybe watch her breathing and count that, and I'd like to have one of my medics here maybe put a blood pressure cuff on her and get a blood pressure. If it's uncomfortable for your mom, we will pull it off, I promise. And that's how that evening might have been handled differently while you're waiting for the ambulance to get there. All right? So when in doubt, just ask. It's okay to ask. All right? But I am an advocate of 3 strikes, you're out. If they continue to get in the way, we got to do something because they had a patient to work with. But ask first. And in most cases, that solves the problem. Yeah? All right, let's talk about this really quick. Why are we doing this? Because Stanford School of Medicine several years ago tried to understand, why do happy people tend to live longer? Why is that? Why do happy people live longer? And how do you put science behind that? Here's how they put science behind it. They know in the medical community that cellular inflammation is the root of all evil. Anything that bad happens to us, probably including COVID Omicron, cells become inflamed in our body. Heart disease, cancers, diabetes, gout, shingles, any problem you could have is because cells become inflamed in your body. That's a measurable quantity in the medical community. Therefore, we can deduce that if you are happy, you should have low cellular inflammation. We should be able to separate who's happy and who's not that way. If that in fact, the theory proves the result. So they started interviewing people in the study who were self-described as happy, and they found a population who was happy because they made a ton of money, they flew around in private jets, they drove Porsches to work, and they lived the good life. And what they found when they studied them was they had very high cellular inflammation. They didn't live any longer than anybody else if it was long. Well, that throw that theory out the window. They're happy, but they got bad stuff in their body. But then they found a population who were self-described as happy because they what did it for them was they liked helping people. People that worked in the helping professions made them happy. Volunteered, made them happy. So they studied that population, and what they found was very low cellular inflammation. That's the population that lives longer, who are happy. Stanford actually, they called it, this research is so amazing, they split away, because the Stanford School of Medicine is this the medical school that started this. The research is so great, and the research is so much, they've now split that into, now they have the Stanford School of Compassion. As a university, that's all they study is compassion. So, happy because you make a lot of money, you're the hedonic. Happy because, hey, I left an imprint that I cared. Eudaimonic. And what's that look like for us? First of all, here's what cellular information looks like for those of you that really want to know what it looks like. There you go. So it's actually a real deal. The big picture is this. If I can leave an imprint that I cared, even at a tragedy, I'm working in my frontal lobes. My frontal lobes of my brain is where my pleasure sensors are. I will get the same feeling of euphoria that I get when I eat a dark chocolate. It hits the same neuroreceptors in my frontal lobes. Leaving an imprint that I cared, even at a tragedy. Lessons learned from my son, right? This is back before we had studied any of this. This is the catalyst for studying this kind of stuff for me, all right? So, go back 2 months when I was here and calls we personalized. They knew my kid. They knew me. They knew my wife. Throw in Christmas. Throw in a wife showing up who's not going to take no for an answer. And that's a mixture of bad things, yeah? Two of the medics, that was their last call, they quit. I did not know that because I had moved away. I had become a professional firefighter someplace. Right? I bumped into him probably 10 years later, teaching at a community college in a paramedic program that I was teaching a fire class in. And it's like, oh, hey, you guys, you're not working. You're doing this now? They said, yeah, your kid's call was our last call. We're done. Like, oh, man, that's sad. My best friend who was on that call got fired because he started drinking and he couldn't stop. The guy that met my wife at the door had to quit because he was such an a-hole nobody could work with. So you quit or we'll kill you. He took a job at a large fire department thinking probably he could hide in with a couple hundred people. And the guys on the line went to admin and said, you get this guy off the line or we will kill him because he's doing this. He doesn't want help, right? So they moved him into the fire marshal's office where the deputies, what would the deputy fire marshal, well, don't put him here. We're going to kill him now. And they ended up forcing him out. Either you retire young or we will fire you. Those are your two choices. So one incident took the careers of 4 people who weren't able to retire. That is sad, and here's why. Remember leaving an imprint that you cared, frontal lobes, not knowing about this, those 4 guys were working in their exact opposite, which is the posterior cingulate, and we are all masters of this. That's where coulda, shoulda, woulda comes from. We are good at that, yeah? That's unproductive, and you could think coulda, woulda, shoulda till the cows come home and you're not going to change anything. You want to get out of that crazy thinking, you be nice. It moves you right back into your frontal lobes, according to Stanford School of Medicine. Why do we need this training? Because working in your frontal lobes triggers the pleasure sensations, lowers depression and anxiety, creates social connectedness, which strengthens immunity, lowers the risk of high blood pressure, obesity and smoking, causes you to live longer. That's why we should do this. What does this mean to you? Now, they don't do studies on firefighters specific with compassion yet. So this is across the U.S. But look at these statistics and apply them to us. People that work in the helping professions that really love volunteering and just embracing their leaving an impact in people's lives have a 30% lower risk for heart disease. Apply that here where the leading cause of our death on the fire ground is heart disease. 27% reduction in sick leave. People are coming to work. They love going to work. 46% reduction in disability pensions. Decreased chronic bitching. I didn't write chronic bitching on there, but that's what it decreases. I don't know if you've ever had that happen here, working a 24-hour shift or somebody bitches 24 hours. Shush, because that exhausts everybody. It also knocks out the negative judgment and biases that we have, particularly at a time right now where many of my clients are telling me the kitchen table at the firehouse is caustic and they hate going to work because it's not a safe place anymore because people want to talk politics and pandemics and weather changes and nobody's going to agree, and that's really, really sad. kitchen table ought to be the safest place in the firehouse. And it's not anymore. This can help counteract that. Remember I said what we do in the field, we can bring that back in the fire station. We take better care of ourselves and each other, and this is how it works. It increases optimism and hope and builds resilience and energy levels. Right? So when I'm teaching this to administrators, fire chief conventions or police officer conventions where the administrators are there, I make them pull out a business card at this time and I make them write CARE on it. Their business card, not mine. And this is what it means to me. The men and women in your charge, every time they go out on a scene, ought to be looking at not just the patient or the victim, widen the blinders, and are we treating everybody on that scene that's related to this person with the same care and respect we would want our family members treated? It's as simple as that. And then we respect everybody. We respect everybody living. Am I treating this elderly woman with the same care and respect I would want my mom treated if my dad had just died in the bedroom? Or we could say respect everybody. Am I treating this elderly guy dead on the bedroom floor with the same care and respect? Because every study shows that if I can treat even a body with the same care and respect I would want a loved one treated, I do better emotionally in the long run. And this is about me. And I make them put that on a business card. Why? Because, see, I think that's our business. These people driving out here don't care that you have beautiful black on red fire apparatus. They don't care. They don't know what your staffing levels are, nor do they care. They don't care if your ladder trucks have 2 or 4 people on them. They don't understand NFPA standards. They don't care. They don't sit there and worry if they have a fire. I hope the good shift's working today. And we all know there's a good shift, but they don't know that. They assume you know how to do your job. If it's a medical emergency, they don't sit there and go, "Guy, I hope the good paramedics are on duty today," because you're licensed in the state of Washington. Doing your job is a given to me. I don't worry about that. So if I don't care about your color of your rig, what your staffing levels are, because as a civilian I don't understand that, and I don't worry about that you can do your job, I'm assuming you know how to do your job, then who do I want coming into my house? Somebody gives a crap what I'm going through. That's our job. The rest is a given to me. That's what sets us above everybody else. And now we are learning when you're able to do that, man, it makes us healthier and happier. That's amazing. So in a sense, what I just taught you is kind of like herding cats. Now, herding cats ain't easy. Have you ever tried it before? It's not easy to herd cats. I'm going to show you a small video of some cat herders and listen to what they have to say. And they will tell you this isn't easy. But boy, when you do it and you do it well, there's not a feeling like it in the world. So listen to these guys.
This man right here is my great-grandfather. He's the first cat herder in our family.
Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy.
Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 half-wild short hairs, well, that's another thing altogether.
Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning, right here, and if you look at his face, it's just ripped to shreds, you know?
You see the movies, you hear the stories, I'm living a dream. Not everyone can do what we do.
I wouldn't do nothing else.
It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost a one of them, ain't a feeling like it in the world.
Yeah, you listen to those guys? It's not easy. Right? It's not easy. But, you know, anybody can herd cattle. Right? We can all go out on a bad call, not want to talk to anybody, get back in the apparatus, and just get away from it. We can all do that. We used to do that. Right? Anybody can do that. But you pull together 10,000 half-wild short hairs and you ain't lost to one of them? Well, there ain't a feeling like that in the world. So you get out there a little bit. It's not easy, but boy, I wouldn't do nothing else, man. I wouldn't. You deliver a herd into town and you ain't lost to one of them, there's not a feeling like it in the world. I'm telling you, you can leave a horrible scene feeling good, and you don't have to have debriefings anymore, in most cases, unless it's a line of duty thing in most cases, right? That's a good place to be. That makes it the best gig in the world. And every time you turn a wheel, you have an opportunity to do that in somebody's life, to leave that impact. That's what they remember the rest of their life, is how nice a firefighter was. That's amazing. That makes it the best gig in the world. So with that, anybody have any questions? So stay safe, make an impact in their life, enjoy the sun, and live the dream. We'll see you later.